Do 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 do. Do, 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 do. Aha! Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. That's always a good sign. So what I'll do now is take a few moments to just share this out, and then we'll call the delectable Rebecca on. Now, let me see now. So, Rebecca's in the waiting room. That's good. Aha. There we are. Now, I have to turn this off, don't I? Cleavemore, Cajun Medium, and 2 others are watching. Hello, everyone. I'll just share this out, and then we'll call Rebecca on. So let's go. We'll share it to the Freedom Network. Oh, hang on. What's gone on there? Watch party. I don't know what that means. Share watch party to more places. Okay. The Freedom Network. It's just too much for an old chap like me, all this stuff. No, God almighty. Where are you? There we are. So many groups here. There we are. Let me see now. Oh, no, don't know what I've done there. Share with up to 10 groups. Okay. No, don't know what that means. Let's do something else again. End watch party. I'm going to end that watch party. Right. Hello, Marie. Ah, Todd Medina. Good grief. You're out of hiding, are you? Good man. Right, let me see who to share this with. Start in a group. Finally, I don't know what all this means. I'm looking for Solargy here. Have you barred me from the site? Oh, I don't know. Maybe some of you could share this out for me because I'm having a problem. I'm having a problem here, but not to worry. Let me see. Okay. Back to there. No. Louis, God bless you, Louis. What's the crack here? There's no crack here, Todd Medina. This is a very, very serious program. Right, I'm going to have one more go at sharing this. Right, add video, start. No, I don't want a watch party. What does that mean, watch party? No, I'm not doing it. Okay, let's get the delectable Rebecca on. Here we go. I've been dying for this. Been chasing this woman down. There she is. Aha! Aha! How are you? Can you hear me? You might be on mute. I thought you were an expert at this sort of thing. It says Rebecca is connecting to audio. We can see you. Todd Medina's passing all sorts of rude comments here. I'm sort of being paid back. It's karma. Rebecca, I can't hear you. Have you unmuted yourself? Let me see if I can do it. I can hear sound.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
You're winning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm plodding along, you know. I've no idea what's going on, but I'm just plodding along.
I don't think anyone's got any idea at the minute, and it's fantastic.
It is, yeah. What's the weather like where you are?
Hey, it's all right up here.
Yeah.
Not bad today.
You're from Tamworth, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm from Tamworth. I moved to Barnsley about 11 years ago.
You sound like a Barnsley person rather than a
I know
Tamworth
I've
person.
been here too long. I need to move on now.
Maybe it's a sign from the universe.
I know, yeah.
So, Rebecca, I've been waiting for ages to talk to you. I've been trying to get you on for ages now. You've plucked up the courage to come on.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of people on here, right, who want to ask you all sorts of difficult questions. Somebody here called Toad Medina or something. Right. So here's the plan. I've been putting up all sorts of rude things about you, but I'm going to go easy with you.
I thought you would. Just a little bit easy. Yeah, it's all true. It's all true.
It's all true. Well, just bear with me because I've managed, people have sent me pictures from the past about you. So do you mind if I'm just going to put a couple up. Is that okay with your permission?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay. Let's just...
Bear with me then. Let's see now. Here's one I found of you a few years ago. There you are. There's your former career. Can you see that?
That's fabulous. Oh, yeah. Hey, yeah, I remember that.
Can you remember it? Right.
I can still stretch like that now.
Can you? Well, that was only last year, that one, right?
Oh, damn.
Yeah. But you know, this ascension, this wave of powerful energy that's moving us up. Here you are now.
I'm living my life quite quietly. Oh, yeah. No.
This is it. This is it now.
That's definitely more like it.
Can you tell us, this was sent by an admirer of yours, you know, which one's you? I think it's probably that one in the green there.
I think so. That's more my style, I reckon. No, my style's face planting straight over the frame.
So I'll stop that now. But yeah, because we had a little joke before you came on, didn't we? And I talked about your pole dancing career, and you said that was over now. You were more of a sort of Zimmer frame type person. So I thought I'd put a couple of those up. But you've been associated, I think, with Solargy for a long time.
Yeah.
How do you mind me asking, how did that all start? And, you know, how did you get into this sort of business of being involved with the likes of Todd McDina and Morgan Lee?
Well, for me, it's been a lifelong. I've always been, not that I didn't realize until maybe I was in my 20s that I've always been sort of, you know, I felt other people's feelings, and I just got so much more of life, and I never could comprehend it. Then as I've got older, obviously I've understood the spiritual side of that, and I've just understood things that haven't needed to be explained. And then about 6 years ago, I went into, I suppose I had an enlightening experience where I was having some really profound knowledge downloads. Everything was just different, more, I understood more. But also my life crumbled during this time, because shortly afterwards, I went into full-blown psychosis. So in one fell swoop, I managed to destroy everything about myself. So, you know, that's what you built up about yourself, your character, how people view you. My kids had to go and live with their father during my period of illness. I've never after that, I had to make a decision about uprooting them again. So I had a huge loss during this time. I even lost my hair. So I kind of lost even my self-identity. I lost my home, I lost my car, everything that you could do during this time. So I was stripped completely and utterly bare. Not realizing that me and Todd had actually made connections probably about 4 years before I actually realized Solargy and stumbled into Solargy. So, you know, I think that path was always meant to be. And I was sharing a lot of my experiences. I was quite confident, but then I had a little personal knock in my own personal life again. So I've kind of gone down that rabbit hole for about 1.5 years now, where, you know, I've just done some deep looking at myself and not necessarily throwing my spirituality outwards, but more getting myself in a part of my life now where I can move on with the foundations of myself, with that self-love, with that concrete things that I needed. So I'm now able to share, which thanks to the likes of you and Mr. Todd, you're not letting me slip away. So it's a good thing.
I see myself like a bit of a snake charmer, really, you know, trying to, my thing is to try and help people to first of all feel their essential nature, you know, and you've done that. You understand what that means.
Yeah.
And then it's really to try and help them to draw it out of themselves and get them to start expressing it, really, not forcefully, more in a sort of very subtle way, because that's how people help me. I was a person where I've always been a showman, you know, but for years and years and years, I was ducking and diving and dodging and weaving, you know, and it was always for avoidance, really, or to keep people from really knowing who I really was. I put up this big smoke screen of this sort of outwardly sort of gregarious type person, when really, believe it or not, the true me loves solitude. I love being by myself. I love deep meditation, and I love to sort of, if you like, allow these downloads, I think they're calling them now, to come in. So they sort of integrate within me, so I get a bit more of an understanding of what's really going on, you know. And my big thing now is to thine own self be true, you know, because I learned that my pathway was one of trying to top myself and being unsuccessful of that, you know, and then sort of trying to drink myself into oblivion for years and years and years, you know. And I think I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, and I went when I was first 28 years of age. So I was obviously sort of being guided at that point. But it took me another sort of 11 years to really understand what they were saying is that I was leading a pretentious life, trying to please and live other people's lives. Does that make some sort of sense to you?
Absolutely. I mean, it was only a few months ago that I couldn't actually sit and say I had psychosis. I suffered, not outwardly. I could say it to my, you know, my family and obviously the people that blatantly knew, but not like this. I couldn't just share it and own it. There's a lot of shame that goes with it. There's a lot of, if I go back, I battled a drink addiction. I stumbled into an amphetamine addiction over the years. That was a hard one to beat. I mean, now I'm absolutely, you know, I've done it. I'm me, I'm myself. I like a little smoke of weed every now and again, but who doesn't, you know, these days? But other than that, I'm me. No matter what's being chucked at me, nothing's changing my character, nothing's falsely guiding me into anything, you know. And so I do understand you feed off. It's not even your own demons in the end that you're feeding off. You seem to get into a behavior of just feeding off anything that's negative.
Yeah.
You know, so I've just spent, and even though I'd cracked it and I realized my behavior, I've had to spend the past kind of 4 years really where I'm changing that behavior. And you are down that rabbit hole. You're looking in the mirror and you're realizing, okay, I'm not dealing with that quite well. So I've done a hell of a lot of that these past few, especially the past few months. I've come on leaps and bounds within myself. I'm owning myself. So I'm owning the discomforts. I'm owning, I don't like to say mistakes, because I think, is there any mistakes really? Because ultimately we've got blueprints in our life, and ultimately they're there and they're stamped. You know, there's might be little branches and little stories that can come off that's our choices that change that, but ultimately the blueprint is there. So no matter how much I say, if I could have done that differently, that wouldn't have happened, and if I would have done that differently, that wouldn't have happened. You're never ever going to love yourself, you know, at that point. So I think the key thing for anyone that's suffering with mental health issues or suffering with themselves or an addiction is to love yourself. And if that's starting by loving that addiction, it's easier to let go of that addiction. While you're hating yourself, while you're, you know, I mean, I've had eating issues, anything that I could self-abuse over the years, I've done it, you know, not consciously, never kind of, I'm going to do this because it's a behavior, isn't it? It's a pattern of behavior.
I think what I've learned is that even though I was always being a good intentioned chap, but my behavior said otherwise, really. And I could never work it out. And this is the truth, you know, because I've never wanted to cause anybody any harm. I've never
No.
wanted to, you know, and I hurt a lot of people, you know, so I could never work out that how my head would say this and then what was actually happening. It was almost like I could see my hands working and think, who's working this? And I know now that those drives were coming from fear and were coming from pride that was deeply down buried in my unconscious. I call it the other than conscious mind rather than subconscious, because it's got an awareness all of its own, you know, and it's super aware and always looking out for danger to protect itself or to get its own way. I can see those two aspects now, is because if I wanted something, right, I would go for it and relentlessly and not give in until I achieved it. So, you know, and that would be, it would be detrimental to other people at the time, you know.
Yeah.
And then there was a fear side of me. I mean, for anybody who's into psychology, this is basically the understanding of transactional analysis, they call it, you know. And the midpoint, which I think is to do with the heart chakra, is called the balanced and adult self, you know. I don't know whether I'll ever get to that myself, you know, but, you know, they clearly say, you know, there's a sort of an emotionally insecure and immature person, right, is always in this great big drama of life and can
Yeah.
always and can always weave stories and turn it back to the other person. You know, we might call that the narcissistic tendency or something like that. But on the
Yeah.
other hand, if somebody was even more narcissistic and stood up to you, we go back into that little victim then as, look at you, what you've done to me, you know. So that was my life basically. I was either a bully, you know, or I was a
Or
victim,
a
you know.
victim. Yeah.
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 And are those characteristics still there lurking? Yes, they are. And that's the truth of it. They haven't left me at all. Right. But I think that they could be used, that the energy of them can be used for positive purpose now. If it's sort of discerned through the heart.
Yeah, it is. It is. I, for me, there's a lot of negativity and it comes in and out of your life. And I like to be still. I like to be still within myself, because any negativity that comes through me, I can transmute it. I can change it. You know, it doesn't need to stay with me. You can't be under the illusion that life isn't going to give you some rubbish. It's going to give, it's going to keep dishing it.
Yeah.
But how you yourself can deal with that, if we're all responsible for that alone, it's like gossip. One of my things I just cannot entertain is gossip, because the chaos that you're adding to the universe, to people's, the energy out there, because everything's energy, you know. So if you get in this tanglement of gossiping about people and lives, and it's like Chinese whispers, it turns into chaos, you know. And I feel that on an energy level so deeply that I'm almost that isolated because of it. You know, I don't want to step into those situations, and it makes me untrusting of people, because as soon as I feel that energy coming in, I don't, for me personally, I don't understand why people have to be so wrapped up into the negative side of someone's life. Yeah. If everybody was that enthusiastic on pulling out the good points of somebody and the good points of somebody's life, then that naturally the world would change itself, because naturally we'd be feeding each other love.
Oh, you know? I agree totally. I mean, I can't be doing with anybody gossiping about anybody else. In fact, I'm quite cut through when it says I'm just not interested in what anybody else is doing. You know, so if I smell it or hear it or feel it coming, I sometimes just walk away from it, really, because I've learned that as soon as you take the bait and get involved in it, it's like psychic vampirism, and it sort of drains all your energy away.
Drains you, yeah, yeah.
And I think it drains me because at some level, you know, as Morgan would say, you know, it's in your field, you're still behaving from that unconscious part of you. So bring it into the light, accept it, and let it be dissipated then by the light, you know. And Rebecca, I didn't have a clue about all this. All I knew was I'd wake up every morning shit scared of everything. I'd have to have a few drinks to get back to some sort of normal balance point so I could carry on with the job, to make the money, to feed the kids, to pay the bills and all that sort of thing, you know. So, I mean, I even have to, and, you know, and I'm being honest about it, I even had to have the drink so that I could drive and not feel paranoid when I was driving and stuff like this, you know. So there were many times when it was like this. Am I ashamed of that now? Not in the slightest. It saddens me, but I'm not ashamed anymore because I
Yeah.
was ill. I'm not a bad person. I was ill, and if ill means ill at ease or dis-easy with myself, then that's where I was
That's
for
exactly
years.
what it was. Yeah.
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 And how do you, let me ask you this question, deep within yourself, how do you feel right now?
Right now,
Yeah.
I love myself more than I ever have done in my life. I'm a lot more comfortable with my spirituality because I was brought up where you're too sensitive. There was always something wrong with me. So I haven't been brave enough to actually accept that about myself. But I can't be anything else. I feel everything. I just do. Even I'll use Mr. Todd as an example. I don't need to be near him. I don't speak to him, but I can feel his mood.
Yeah.
I can feel how he is. I feel life that powerfully. So for me, it is how am I going to find that balance where I can cope with myself and cope with life. So even though I've got to the point that I love myself and I've accepted all, my shames are no longer shames. They're just part of everything. But now I'm stuck as how am I going to step out? That's the part where I'm stuck at now. But I suppose this is my first step. Hey.
Oh, it's marvelous. I mean, you're like a professional, and I mean, I can sense your sensitivity as well, because I think people who are into solargy are mostly psychically sensitive people.
Yeah.
Who've
Yeah.
maybe tried to close that down over the years so
Yeah.
that they could live in the so-called normal world, the world of big business and capitalism and all that business, and I can see now that I don't need to fit in anymore. I just need to fit in with myself. You know what I mean? Because generally speaking, on Solargy, for example, and this channel and stuff, is everybody's accepted. Come along, open up, spill the beans. If there's anything bothering you, just get it off your chest, right? And see what happens next, Because I honestly believe that most of us have been so sensitive. Well, now I'll talk about me. I was so sensitive that if I said something and saw a reaction coming from you that I perceived as negative, I would change my story immediately then, because I thought I've upset you, you see. So I was always walking on eggshells, and I never knew. I would say something and watch your reaction. And if you looked like upset by it, I'd then tell a little joke to try and bring you around again, So I was always terrified of actually going out. I was afraid of the letterbox going because it was another bill, I was afraid, and I still don't like it when the phone goes. I have an instantaneous F off and leave me alone, and I'm still like that today,
That's me.
And I honestly don't feel at the moment that I can do anything about that first reaction or that first thought process. But I can catch myself in it now before it actually trundles away and opens up into a million different possibilities. So I've learned that by breathing, I call it mindfulness, call it whatever, when I get the first bump, I can go backwards now, breathe in a certain way, settle down, open up again, and then make a more informed choice,
Yeah. And I find what helps me is, and I love doing it, I love just practicing living in the now. So for this interview, this today, I've just had to live in the now. I've just had to plod on with my day and just not think about it and just live in the now. And that for me, the feeling it gives me, it gets rid of so much anxiety, because the things that you add before and after is what makes you anxious. It's not the now. So I'm really enjoying, and if I can adapt that in every area of my life, then it will be fun. I'm working on it.
No, I think we, I say we all are. I mean, I don't know. I thought enlightenment was maybe something where you just didn't have any feelings, and you were just, you were just like blissful. See, sometimes my head sneaks off into an ideal of how I think it should be, and that's the trap then, because
that's the trap.
Yeah, then I'm always comparing who I am and what I'm feeling now with some imaginary standard of how I think it should be. I was like that all my life. From the moment I was born, I was given the standards of society, the fears and the standards and the principles of my mother, who was a very sensitive person. You know, my dad brought me up in other ways. And so there was always a conflict between how my mum thought I should live and how my dad thought I should live, you know. And so, yeah, I didn't know who to speak to, who to please, who to, you know, and I feel free of that now. And, you know,
Yeah.
maybe I think because I've got older, people have said to me, well, haven't you just grown into that? I don't think so. I think I had to go through shit to find out that there was a different way to live. And it was called being authentic, being real,
Yeah.
being raw, and being your bleeding self, you know.
I think that's why I was stripped bare. I mean, because I've had times in my life before where, you know, I've been homeless and I've lost a car at the same time. It was a familiar pattern. But, you know, just when you think like, you know, I'm strong, what can the universe do to me this time? And then suddenly I go into psychosis and I haven't got my children around me. So, you know, and then I was completely and utterly stripped bare. And the only thing that I could do, I couldn't go back to who I was. She wasn't there. She wasn't a mum. She wasn't a, I was a mum at 19. I was so young. It's all I've ever known, you know, so it was so hard for me. And it's took me a good 5 years to find that identity that isn't a mum mode, that isn't anything other. That was my identity. Yeah. You know, so when I took that away, I didn't know who I was.
I think mums, you know, I'm saying this live now, but, you know, I think mums have a tough job. I really do, you know. And I think, you know, I can see clearly, you know, this sort of patriarchal system going back eons and things like that. And I honestly do feel there's a resetting now where this nurturing energy of the real turned up the right way feminine is coming back to reset the balance, you know. And I see sometimes, this is my view, and I could be completely wrong. I think sometimes females get it wrong because it's almost like they're being given permission now to fight back against what's gone before them. And I think that feels like something that's wrong, that really, you know, it's like, yeah, you've done this to me, so I'm going to effing pay you back now, you know. And I think that just keeps the fight going, you know.
It will keep the fight going. It needs to come to a balance. And I mean, what's happening globally at the moment, it's terrible. It's terrible when we look at it personally in our lives, but when we look at it spiritually and we look at it, you know, from that bird's eye point of view, and it is actually something quite profound. And we are lucky to be living in this time. We are lucky to be here in our earthly bodies, because this is the time that things are changing. This is the time that everything that I've felt, you know, back in 2011, 2012, it's happening now. You know, all the things that I saw, all the things that I felt, I can see it happening now. I felt the disease. I knew it was coming, you know, and then I knew things that are coming afterwards, and whether these things are going to happen is yet to be seen. So for people that have had this in them brewing, and people have looked at us like we're mad, this is the time that we really are. We're leveling up with others now. They are being, it's a, you know, when you're a broken person, you've got a contrite spirit. Is the most powerful time. Well, there's a lot of people going through difficulties at the moment, but if we can try and be contrite as a nation, be contrite in our communities together, keep our spirits up, the power that spiritually can bring in opening people's heart chakras up, in opening, you know, and they will start to behave differently, not because they're being taught to behave differently, because their heart is telling them to behave differently. That is how the new world will happen. It's not going to be this magic, we're jumping off onto another universe somewhere. It's going to happen by our hearts. And this now, it's real, it's happening. And we are so privileged to be. I've spent all my life not wanting to be here. I spent all my life actually wanting to die, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I've had one major serious attempt that, gosh, I am so lucky to be here that I'm actually, why, how, you know? If I look it over and over. And now I want to be here. It's suddenly flipped overnight. Society's leveling up. They're all having that uncertainty. They're all having to live in a way that's not, you know, man-made. You know, society is so man-made.
There's no coincidences, because you mentioned 2011, 2012, you know. I stopped drinking just over 28 years ago. And with that became this big spiritual experience where for 9 months I was floating on cloud 9, or call it cloud 13 now, you know, because we've moved up a few dimensions or
Just a
moved down.
few.
Yeah, but for 9 months I was basically completely and utterly flowing and overflowing with the spirit of release, you know. And I thought it was the second coming myself, you know what I mean? I was going round blessing everybody and stuff like
Tell
that,
me,
you
I've
know.
been there, I know.
Yeah. they call that, apparently, it's called two things: the honeymoon period, and they call it, you know, the savior complex, you know. And I really felt that was my mission, was just to touch people and they would be healed, you know. I look back and I laugh at that now, you know, because there were people around me, my so-called mates, who were wishing I'd go back on the piss, you know, because it was such a pain in the arse, you know. But I felt like everywhere I walked, flowers would grow and all that, you know. So I really, really experienced, right, this massive egomania that was driven by a free and flowing spirit, you see. And then I got this thing. I woke up one morning and it was all gone, right? And I thought, oh my God, it's come back to get me. The devil has got me again, you see. And I rang up they call a person who helps you in AA a sponsor. I rang up my sponsor and I told him, and he said, thank fuck for that. He said, right. He said, Joe, let me explain to you what's happened is you've had a great big spiritual awakening. You've been shown what it can be like, but now you've been taken back to the beginning because you've got to embody this one step at a time. Tell people how you're embodying it. Share with them your truthful experiences, right? And they may resonate with that, and you may save them 10 to 15 years of hell just by being open and honest. And I honestly believe that, because people say to me, Rebecca, you know, who are you and what do you do? I've just got to laugh. You know, I've got all these bleeding qualifications and all that nonsense, and I've spent a lot of time in my head and book learning and stuff like that. But you know what? I don't know who I am from one moment to the next, except I feel okay about it.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
to go back to that 2011, sorry to butt in, to go back to that 2011, I got woken up on the 11th of the 11th, 2011 in the morning. I don't exactly know what time, but I'm going to say it must have been 3:33 in the morning, you know, because I've got to chuck a bit of poetic license in there.
Of course you have, yeah.
And this voice said to me, whether it was a voice or a really strong flow of thinking, it said to me, you need to learn about the global shift in consciousness that's about to happen, right? And you need to start learning, and you need to start explaining this to people. Rebecca, I didn't have a clue what it was about. And it was only from that point that I started to learn about the great shift. Within a few months, I was given lectures on it, talks on it, and it was just coming through me. And like you've just said, I got shown all the possibilities, all the probabilities that might happen. And I saw this divergence, and it was almost like 5D went that way and 3D went that way, you know. And then something grew between the middle of these two things, you know. And I'm only hoping that divergence starts to come back again like that, almost like DNA, where we start to interact with these different dimensions, and a balance point, or as Todd might call it, a 0 point. We can sit there and see the actions that we need to take next. Does that make any sense to you?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the first profound experiences that happened to me, I was cleaning, I had a black glass kitchen table, it was very long, and I was polishing it, and I don't know where I went, but I saw Earth, I saw New Earth, I saw the grid, I were in the grid, I wasn't me, I were in the grid, and I understood how, when we say that we cross paths solely and we're all connected, I understood that we're all built like atoms and molecules, and we're all connected in this way, but on this grid level of energy. You know, the things I knew by the time I came out of cleaning, you know, out of this thing that I was in, I knew so much. I had no idea how long I was cleaning the table for, but I knew more than I could possibly comprehend in that moment. It was like in that sudden moment, I knew the things about the Big Bang. It's endless. It's endless. I'd need to go and get lots of books out to look back on everything that I've jotted down, and the things that, and from that moment, absolutely, I understood everything happens as that 0 point. If you look at chemistry, everything, you do an experiment and you put everything together, it will go boom. It needs a period where it does this. It goes to the negative, it goes positive, and then it needs to do that. Otherwise, it won't work. And that's how our lives are going. We're going from here at the moment, and we're going back up. You know, so this is where we're going to lose a lot of hate. We're going to lose a lot of, you know, sort of the things like jealousy, and it's not going to be part of our feelings. It's just not going to be there to feel it. We're in our new, these are the children's children that's coming, you know, they're just not going to be there. They're hate. What's hate? You know, that's how it's going to happen. And I'm so excited to be part of it, and my kids. And
see, I feel, you know, I feel emotional when you're talking like this, because I understand totally what you mean, you know, and I see that thing about Mother Earth and the Earth magnetic lines, you know, ley lines. I see them obstructed. And what I keep seeing is almost like a new template, a crystalline template coming.
They're moving to be the flower of life. They're moving. That's what it will be. And it's when they all connect is when we lose our bodies. That's when we become, I mean, it's not going to be an overnight process. This is going to be a process that will go on as we expand, as we become more conscious as a collective global. This is what's going to happen. But the day that grid turns into that is when we will have telepathic, everything will just click, and we will literally be a different species. We'll still be the human species, but not as we know it now. You know, that will be the day.
I see that, you know, these are apocalyptic times. Certainly there's an Armageddon aspect as well going on in the invisible. I feel that very strongly, but also I feel that this crystalline matrix that's coming in, crystalline representing the Christ, representing, you know, a higher energy, you know, it's almost like, how can I explain it? Fitting on top of the Earth's grid lines and just unblocking them, so that that actually starts to feel. And I see that in the human body as well, where the soul, as it starts to integrate itself with the physical body, the energetic body is moving now through the nervous system. The nervous system then is working through the blood system. The blood system is impacting upon the stem cells. And as you know, the stem cells create who we are. So this new energy, we're being created in the image and the likeness of the new wave that's coming in. Now, I used to have these when I was on the piss. I used to have all this stuff come to me, you know, and I'd come round either in a cell, in a cell, or back in the bleeding psychiatric departments. But I can see now that I used to get these downloads because the alcohol was disinhibitory. It allowed all this stuff that was trying to come out to express itself, but it was still a very, very immature ego mind. Yeah. And so, you know, it's still the same, by the way. I've only grown up a little bit, but I'm starting to feel now how when things get too pressurized for me, I can take a step back a bit, relax a little bit, and allow the flow to come through in a more regulated way. And for me, I'm sorry for butting, because you know what I'm like, I just butt in, but it's, if it comes up and it gets moderated through the heart, then it enters my head in a different way, and I can sort of process information in a bit of a sort of more controllable way, or regulated way. Yeah.
And I think once you feel that difference, any person, whether they believe themselves, we're all spiritual, but whether you want to believe yourself to be spiritual or not spiritual, when anybody can learn to take things from the heart then into the head, it's a much more controlled way of being. But it's a practice to start with. It's not something that, you know, because we all have our moments where we might even trip up a wire, we might, you know, might drop something, and we slip into that moment where then we can go on for another hour in that mindset, in that behavior, you know, where it's very, you have to then drop yourself back into your heart space and just let it go that you've just tripped up the wire, you know, and you have to practice the little things like that, and then you're able to adapt the bigger things when they hit you, about dropping it into the heart space and letting it go, you know. it's a practice, but I think anyone can do it.
I think I can handle the really big stuff, no problem. You know, it's the little termites, you know, that ceaselessly devour your peace of mind. Like we've got in the bathroom, we've got a leaking tap, you know, and it's dripping, you know, and it's getting on my nerves, you know. So I thought, I'm very good at these practical things. I'll have a go, you know. So I got all the wrenches out. I'm under the bath, taking my time, tightened it up, took the wrenches off. It's worse. And because I can't get a plumber in because we're all on lockdown, you know, I'm trying to find all these creative ways. But there's a part of me that just wants to take a hammer and smash the effing thing to pieces, you know. And
it's just going to drip even more then, isn't it? You've got to start loving the tap, loving the drip, and it might do you a favour and just switch off.
Yeah, no, I've tried that. I've tried to send it love and everything.
You've got to...
But what it's trying to show me is, Joe, first of all, it's not that bloody important, right? You've got a leak in your aura because of your bleeding frustration. Why don't you just let it go and get a life, you know? And I have all these, and you said before, I don't believe in mistakes. I believe in experiences, really.
Yeah.
You know, and I think sin is a good word because it just means to miss the mark. It means, from the Greek, apparently, it means to just be off target. And I think that that's what's happening now. Is it's almost like this great tide of magneto-electric energy is coming in just to reset us back into the alignment of our own individual soul's purposes. Because we're not the same, even at the level of the soul, we're different expressions of spirit, you know. And so I think it's about collective individuality, really. What do you think about that?
It is, and how the moment that society is crumbling because of, you know, the coronaviruses that's going around, it's crumbling them to a point that we're all going to have to start uniting. We're all going to have to start caring about our neighbours, caring about our communities that we're living in. And once a community can become pretty much self-sufficient, you know, how strong will that be in not only the terms on how we treat our country, but how we treat each other? You know, that will change consciousness alone. Is you relate to somebody when you've gone through something. You know, if you've gone through something similar, you'll relate to somebody. We're all going through the same at this moment. It's a perfect time for us to wake up and look at the person across the road. Look at the person that's around you. We don't see each other.
No. We
don't. So how we can't go on and on and on like that. We need a wake-up call where we start relating, where we start to be those that we can feel feelings for a reason. You know, so use that. We're so selfish in a way that we're looking after ourselves. So all we want to do is make sure that we're okay. That's not why we're born into families. If we're meant to be that way, we would be born and we would have the nature of needing to just survive on our own. Nobody can survive on their own. Humans aren't meant to. We need to wake up, and we need to wake up now. And we need to reach out to, you know, just too many people judge. They put a judgment there before that empathetic feeling that we have for somebody. There is no mistake. Somebody's life experience is their life experience. You know, we've got to start respecting that about every single individual, whether we agree or not agree with what is being presented in front of us, which is not a fat lot. When you just look at somebody, you don't know their life. You don't know why they're here. You don't know their purpose. You know, we've got to give a lot more freedom to each other. We've got to give a lot more allowance to each other, work together and love.
I agree totally. I mean, that's selfishness, self-centeredness. This is a line from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's basically my Bible, to be honest with you, because it saved my life. And they're basically spiritual principles. You know, people sometimes think it's brainwashing, but it's not. It's actually cleaned my brain and released me from all the shit that everybody else poured into me, you know. And so it's helped me. And their underlying principle is to thine own self be true, you know. That's within it. And what I'm trying to say is, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I've lost my train of thought. But let me see if I can pick that up. No, I can't. Must have been a lie, as they say. It'll come back to me.
Well, the
Oh yeah,
best
I know.
thing you
Sorry, go on. Look.
remembered. Have you remembered?
No, no.
No, the best thing that when my psychosis happened, it was like anything to do with me somehow in some warped way was out there for the world. My secret, my everything, everything in one foul swoop was out there. And it has been so refreshing from that day forward to live in complete and utter truth. I have nothing to hide. And that's the most refreshing thing out of all this, is whatever I say, whatever I do from this day on, I suppose it's a bit like a baptism if you want to be religious about it. Yeah. It's whatever I do and say from this day on. If I'm in truth, if I'm right, I feel so wonderful. So even though at the time, it was so mortifying, it destroyed me. But now I'm happy about it. Now I'm glad, because I'm one of the rare few that's just like, hey, you know what? Yeah, yes and yes. But this is who I am now. This is what I am now. And I love myself as I am now. I'm not carrying that that little bit of everybody's got a little secret about themselves, or a little addiction that they've once tried. Whether it's food, alcohol, whatever it is, we've all got that addictive nature. It's a human thing,
See,
it is.
I'm in the same club as you, that I've opened myself up totally. I sat with another human being and I divulged everything that I was ashamed of, everything that I did and everything else. It was like a proper confessional, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, right, this person who I was with, who'd already been through the same process and was experienced to listen to other people, he said, "Is that it?" He said, "Is there anything in there that you're going to take to the grave with you?" And I searched. There was not a single thing. And I said, "That's it now." And I had a piece of paper, and I remember this very clearly. We went into his back garden and we set light to this paper that I'd made a list of. And as the paper burns up like that, I could start to feel this great big wave of like I've got it now. It's coming up my spine now as I'm talking about it. A great big wave of cleansing energy just something left me, right? And that's when I realized, right, that I was free to live authentically and to live my truth. And what you see is what you get right now.
Literally.
Yeah. I'm not trying to think of anything clever to say, because I used to be the duck. I can't be arsed anymore. It takes too much energy. It takes too much energy to lie and to duck and dive. So this is me. And if you don't like me, it's okay, because I like me. I'm okay with me. I'm trying to improve myself in certain ways every day, because there's certain things I'd like to improve. But you know what? If I don't get there, it doesn't really matter that much, So, and on that night when I went home, this is no shit, when I went home, I felt weird, right? And I was living by myself, right? Normally I'd go in, I was up on the 9th floor of a big block of flats. It was a horrendous place. I'd normally go in, I'd be frightened going in because I didn't like the people I was living with and all that. That had left me, I went in and I sat on the bed, and this voice said to me, this is no shit, this voice, as loud as you like, said, "Joseph, we love you." And I said, "That's very, very nice. Thank you very much indeed. Piss off. Come back when it's light in the morning," And the next morning I woke up into a new life. Now, whether you call that reborn in spirit, whether you call getting a second chance, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not a religious person. I'm not religious anymore. I believe all the fundamental things in the religions are saying the same thing. Yes. Surrender to your big self, because it'll guide you back home.
Yeah, the truth is in us all. We have access to the truth. But we also put our own resistance there as well. So once we've fought through all our own resistances and we've gone down the rabbit holes, our access to the truth, it's there. You seek and you shall find. If you've got that open, honest, humble heart, and you seek and you shall find. And I do it all the time, and I get the answers.
See, I know it's come back to me from before. The line was, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of all our problems. It's not like one of the problems, it's the root of it. And I can see that now, that essentially we're born into this human framework that's essentially a self-seeking device,
Yeah.
And we have to keep seeking until we get to a point where we realize that self-seeking doesn't work. It's not going to bring us the happiness we're looking for, because we're trying to fill a spiritual void with material things. It's easy for me to say this now, because I used to think the other way. I had a relatively successful life with loads of money and big house and cars and holidays and all that. I had that, yet deep inside myself, I knew that I didn't have anything at all, and fulfillment. I didn't feel full because I wasn't fulfilled. I feel like the Pope again now, and I was trying to take everything from outside to fill the hole in my soul, as Robbie Williams would say. And I realized today is, it's to surrender and to ask to be guided into the correct way that suits me, not that suits everybody else, but that works for me and resonates from my soul and give us a clue,
We're all individual for a reason. There's, one model doesn't fit all, and it never will. And that includes how we deal with our own spirituality. And everything different will fit for everybody else. But we've all got to own ourselves enough to find out what that is. There's no leaders in all of this. There's people who can inspire people, and there's people that can guide people, along a certain path. But there's certainly no leaders. We're all equal. But the basis of that is love. It is love.
It is, and what I've found out is human love attaches itself to objects,
doesn't it?
And unconditional love does exactly the opposite. Human love takes prisoners, and especially fearful, emotionally insecure human love takes prisoners and keeps an eye and surveils them and all that sort of business.
That's the misconception of what love is.
Absolutely. And unconditional love says, go on then, off you go, find yourself, be yourself. And then if you want to be with me, so be it. And if you don't, God bless you, good luck to you, and have a happy life, And I used to be completely and utterly filled with paranoid insecurity and jealousy and rage and everything else, until I realized it was that was causing me all my pain. It was being attached to something else. So to me, unconditional means living a life of non-attachment, really. It's
of
just
acceptance,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's bloody good, this. We should have recorded. Oh, we have done that. This will go out. Be top 10. Be better than that Sology stuff.
Oh. I can't be saying that. Be duck and dive.
No, yeah, ducky, yeah. But Rebecca, tell me, have you had any things like the light language or extraterrestrial or intergalactic communications or anything like that? Do you get any of that stuff at all?
There's a place that I go to locally, and it's up on a hill. And I find this place is really powerful. It used to be an old coal mine. So we've all got the carbon there, and there's water there. For me, in time to come, I think it's going to be a very powerful place, energy. I'm very drawn to it. And as I walk up this hill every time, it's the only time at the moment that I will naturally just comes out of my mouth. It will. I can't take myself away from that place, and it doesn't happen. But if I take myself to this one particular place, as I'm walking up this hill, it just overtakes me. And by the time I'm sat on this thing at the top, I'm away, and yeah, I feel the dragon energy. I do feel energies like that. It's what you're focused on at the time, because I feel spirit. I can feel the energy of source, where I tend to just go to source. So if I choose to want to feel the other energies that are coming in, the blue energy and all that I can do, but I tend to just want to stick with source, because you kind of feel it all. You kind of get what you need to get if you just stick with source.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Well, I see that in a slightly different way, in that I think that those different energies are different potentials in a human being, really. They're different dimensions, different frequencies. And I think that we're all opening up, because I'm like you, I can sit at source and sort of see them outside of me now. Whereas
Yeah.
before, when I was going back to source, for want of a way to saying it, when I was going back, I would get logged on and stick in the story of that one energy. But I can
I can
see now
see the
that,
energy for other people. I can see what energy is there that's around other people. But I think for myself, I used to be so into the dragon energy, the Blu-ray, you know, those two particularly for me. But then I'm very, very drawn, and I don't know where this energy comes from, but it's the return of the doves. When I was younger, I used to have a child, I used to have two doves visit me in the night, and the light that they were used to light up my room. They were like the brightest light, and they used to there's two of them just there, and I could see them. And my mum thought I was crazy about those birds were in my room again last night. Mum, will you stop saying that? Stop saying things like that, you know. But for me, they were there. So I've always been very drawn, because they gave me peace. They gave an upset childhood. They gave me, you know, sort of, they were there for me. And when I look into sort of that energy and the dove energy, it's more of a Christ energy. And that's the one that I am very much always been attached to. And it's the Christ consciousness, it's the Christ energy. That's the one that I would say, it's white, it's beautiful, it's got golden things coming in and out of it. You know, that's the one that's for me. So, but then with others, I do tend to feel the dragon energy. I know what the dragon energy is about. You know, I felt it myself at times. I've also felt panther energy about 3 years ago. You know, so I've at times they've come into my life. I've obviously needed them. You know, and big, what do they call the Bigfoot? I felt that energy as well a few years back, as if to go, we're here, we're hidden, but we've got you, we can see you, you know. And they were really encouraging me to, you know. So I have felt them over the years, but my main one ever since a child, it's that beautiful Christ consciousness energy that it's my heart, it's my truth.
I'm very attached to that energy, but more, I've always, all my life, been drawn to the divine feminine, you know, in different pictures. And over the years, and talking to other people, and it surprised me when other people started to talk about the same thing, was the Magdalene energy, you know, very, 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 very powerful. It's guided me for a long time, you know. And also all the way back to the Egyptian story and vibrational medicine and Imhotep and all these things. And I never knew, but I just kept getting the pictures of it, you know, through the Gnostics and the Essenes and the south of France and over to Ireland, you know, and all these things.
I'm getting all the same things there, starting at the bottom of the country, then over to France, and then over to I'm getting, to me, the water's linked there as well. It's the knowledge in the water.
I'm getting so much about water and about the interaction of spirit and water, because to me, for the human body point of view, it's the way this quantum, I call it disentanglement. It's like a quantum washing that's working through the space between cells, and it's working with the protons in the water. And you know, and I get all this and I say, okay, hang on, can you give it to me slowly, please? So I can sort of put it down step by step. Because my big thing, Rebecca, is how can we make some practical use of the downloads that are coming in? You know, because I really feel that, as Todd and Morgan would say, the human is the hero. And I think that this energy has to be embodied and acted out through the human vehicle. That's where I'm up to now, you know. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show people through synchronized breathing with emotion how to become more centered and grounded, you know. So on that note, because we're sort of coming up to time, that's gone really quickly, hasn't it?
Yes,
so have you got any little practical tips that might help people based upon your experience at all?
For me, it is one of things to say at the moment, but it is that time to take yourself into the self-isolation. is to take yourself away from other energies and just sit in your own energy and breathe. You know, just simply by what you can get from that is amazing. If you can't empty your head, it doesn't matter because it will happen in time. But if you can always find a time of the day, every day, to just take yourself into your own space for however long that you're comfortable in that space, away from, you know, the energies that are around you, that's when people will start to realize how energies affect you, and that you'll find inside at that point. So I think for me, that during this time, yeah, everybody's got to go within. They've got to listen to what's going on within them. Your heart speaks.
Absolutely, you know, heart intelligence. And I'm starting to call it innate intelligence now, because I think that we're born with it. It gets clouded and shielded by a husk, really, which really, you know, that's, and this is the Kabbalah, you know, or the Kabbalah, whatever you want to call it. They talk about the husk. They talk about something called the opponent, which I think is the shadow self and stuff, you know. And what I got clearly yesterday was on my run, because I get a lot of inspiration when I'm running, you know. I go into this sort of rhythmical running where I can hardly breathe. It's either the coronavirus or it's because of my age, you know, one of those. And I get into this rhythmical running, and then it's almost like a dynamic 0 point where my head opens up like a funnel and it all comes through, you know. Excuse me. And that's where I capture most of this information. And I got Joe, the whole thing about shadow can only be created when there's something in the way of the light. And I thought, what are you talking about? And then I go, so get out of the way.
We are our own resistance.
Exactly.
We're exactly that.
And, you know, I like say that because I have this sort of F-off relationship with my guides and my inspirers, you know what I mean?
Me too. We got quite a rapport.
And I'm saying, thank you, you know, and I'm a very sarcastic person, believe it or not. And I say to them, thank you so much for that, right? But if you'd like to clearly show what you're getting at, I'd be most appreciative of that, you know what I mean? And the whole point about it is I can sense when there's a lesson coming up or when there's an obstruction. I feel that because I'm supremely attuned to my body and the way it feels.
I was going to say earlier on that I've got to a point that anything I'm fearing, it's a bit like instant karma, because anything that I'm fearing, it's like, bam, there's your fear. It's like, I've literally got to the point of that. So I'm having to live in a 0 point because I'm like, no more, no more. If I start to fear it, I'm like attracting it, literally.
But exactly, but it's good, isn't it? Because it's so, I see that as the soul opens, it draws to it the next lesson, if you like. And okay, maybe they're not lessons, but the next bit of
something that you've got to work through, something that your soul has got to, you know, sort of transmute into a better energy. You know, until we've done it, we're going to keep repeating it.
Yeah, like a refinement, like a twiddling the knob to get into the, you know, the real clarity of a clear signal. You know, that's the way I see it now. It's tuning in, and whether you want to do it on the 7 chakras or the 12 chakras or the 13th, it doesn't matter. I don't get bogged down with that now. I just go along, and if I'm open and flowing, I just keep going. And but if I get one like a fly landing on me, boom, I can step back in my mind now, and nobody needs to know this. I step back in my mind and say, what are you showing me here? What have I just got hold of? What's just come into me field? Show me how to clear it. Breathe it away. Thanks very much. Now, if I breathe it away, like it's like a cow's tail, flat, you know, doing that and getting flies off its back. That's the way I see it. And then if it doesn't clear by me breathing it away, it's something that I need to sit with and go a bit deeper. So I see the deeper significance in it, you know, and stuff like that. So
conscious living.
I'm just like learning like everybody else, you know, but I feel fantastic. I know in my heart that everything's going to work out perfectly well, you know, and sometimes people around me don't feel that. And you can't really grow up for somebody else, you know, and that's the difficult part, because I've done that a lot of my life. I've jumped in to try to save people from the lessons that they need to, or the actions that they need to take themselves, you see. And I've sort of stopped doing that now, although I haven't fully done it, you know, but I'm much better at detaching with love these days.
whoever you are right now and however you display yourself right now is exactly how it's meant to be, because that is right now. You can just let go of even that, because it is just as it is right now, is exactly how you are meant to be.
And I'm all right with that. And I'm definitely all right with you. And I'm so glad that we've had this conversation.
You did it.
Right. And I think that probably you're going to be invited onto a lot more shows now.
Oh, the joy. Can't wait. It's been really good, actually. So thanks very much for hounding me all these weeks.
It's a pleasure. And we must keep in touch, and hopefully we can maybe do this on some sort of a regular basis, see how it all works out.
Yeah, definitely. All
right. And in the meantime, keep smiling.
You too. Stay safe.
Hang loose, and speak to you soon.
I'll get back to them polls. All right. Then.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. Bye, love.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.